In this episode of Rooted in Retail, I am sitting down with my colleague and friend, Georganne Bender of Kizer and Bender. We are talking about all things store layout and merchandising. And holy guacamole, George is talking about a lot of stories of how her and her business partner, Rich, have helped so many retailers over the years. She talks about a lot of different stories on specific things that they've done and changed within a store layout to produce double-digit sales growth. These are things that you could go and do after you watch this episode. Some of these things are free that you don't need to spend any money on. So if you have a physical storefront and you want to grow your sales, listen to this episode. George has so many actionable tips. So I hope that you are taking notes, and I also hope that you take action. And if you do something from today's episode and you're seeing results, you've got to share it with me and George. You can do so on the Crystal Media CO Instagram account is the easiest way. Post it, tag us, DM us, or if you want to email us, we're hello@crystalmediaco.com. But we want to hear, because I really feel strongly that there are going to be several listeners. If you take action, you're going to see more sales and happiness and excitement from today's episode. We also talk about common mistakes that retailers make. And I asked George, if a retailer did one thing to make a big difference, what would you recommend that to be? Now she shared, I think it was 3, maybe 4 things, but they're all super easy for you to do. And again, you've got to take action on this episode. I mentioned this in the episode, but George is going to be speaking at my event, Evolve, and she made an epic offer to Evolve attendees. So if you are coming to Evolve, George recommended that you bring pictures of your store so she can give you free advice and tips and ideas on how you could possibly change things, re-merchandise, add a speed bump, what's going on in these pictures. She's going to look at these pictures and give you advice, which I think is phenomenal and a huge value add to our event Evolve. So I just thank George for that. If you haven't gotten your ticket yet, early bird, super early bird is available until the end of 2023. So you're going to want to secure that ticket and bring those pictures of your store. Before we dive into today's episode, here's a little bit more about my guest. Georganne Bender is a speaker, retail strategist, author, and consultant. Georganne and her business partner, Rich Kizer, have helped thousands of businesses in the retail, creative, restaurant, healthcare, dental care, hospitality, collegiate, toy, travel, tanning, beauty, tech, auto, sales, and service industries grow their sales since 1990. Georganne is particularly known for her store makeover and visual merchandising skills. Georganne and Rich are experts on generational diversity, consumer trends, marketing and promotion, and everything retail. As consumer anthropologists, they stalk and study that most elusive of mammals, today's consumer. Each year, Kizer and Bender host consumer focus groups, one-on-one interviews, and intensive on-site studies. The result of their research is literally straight from the mouth of the consumer. Solid ground level intelligence you can use to better serve your own customers. Kizer and Bender are married, just not to each other. 2023 marks their 33rd year anniversary as a speaking team. And we missed Rich on today's episode, but George is bringing the tips on her own. And I'm so excited for you to learn from her. So let's dive in. Welcome to Rooted in Retail, the show that's dedicated to helping independent retailers thrive in today's ever-evolving retail landscape. I'm your host, Crystal Vilkaitis, and I'm thrilled to have you join me weekly as we explore topics that are vital to the success of your store. From marketing to mindset, money to merchandising, sales to leadership, we'll cover it all. Each episode features interviews with industry experts and accomplished retailers who share their real-life insights and actionable advice. Get ready for a great conversation on how to build your dream business with Rooted in Retail. George, welcome to Rooted in Retail. I'm thrilled you're here.
Hi, Crystal. I'm thrilled to be here too.
Yes. Okay. You are super rooted in retail, you and Rich both. And so when we were prepping for this, you and Rich partnered and started working together in 1990. But you shared with me that you started in 1973 and Rich began right after college in 1970. So will you take us back a little bit? How did you and Rich meet and what made you start Kizer and Bender?
think I should probably start by telling you that after I graduated from high school, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to go to college or not. And I wasn't living at home because my parents had moved around so much that they had moved in the middle of 7th grade, and then we moved in the middle of my senior year, and I refused to go, so I stayed with friends. So I came home, and my mother said, get out of the house and get a job, and don't come back until you get one. And the only place I applied was this wonderful family-owned department store in Milwaukee, in Brookfield, Wisconsin, and that's how I started. Rich started with, right out of school, he worked for a company called Klein's, and he literally managed a chain of junior department stores. He was such a promoter and such a go-getter that he saw the competitor across the street whose store in Oshkosh had 4 more floors than his store did. So he went on a journey to take that store over, and he did, and moved his across the street. So we've been around a long time.
Gosh. Dang, I love it. Yeah. That's awesome.
So we both worked for a company called Household Merchandising, and we both worked in the Ben Franklin Stores division. And when I met Rich, he was in the training department. But he also had been in real estate and marketing and run a couple of other areas. So, and I was in visual merchandising. And we met because we would do these trade shows that were giant. You know, we would take 3/4 of the Las Vegas Convention Center. Stores like True Value and Ace Hardware still do this, where all of your franchisees come, and it's just like any other trade show, but we would do it twice a year just for our franchisees. I mean, we would set complete stores in the center of the trade show. It was an amazing feat. Anyway, so we're at this trade show, and I did a seminar on visual merchandising and store design, and Rich had done something on, I think, marketing at that point. And the meeting planner came to us and said we had some people that, you know, they were supposed to be on this panel discussion, and they had said that they can't do it. Can you guys do it? Sure. What do we know? We're in our 30s. What do we care? We'll do it. So we do this panel discussion, and during the panel discussion, if you know me, I am pretty much what you see is what you get. And he had said something during this answering the question, and I thought it was stupid or something, and I made a smart comment back to him, and then we just took over this presentation. And afterwards, the meeting planner said to us, you guys are really good, you should do this. In fact, come back to the next show and do a program together. And I thought, okay, because I didn't even know what a speaker was. He did. He wanted to be one. I didn't know what they were. I'm like, yeah, okay, we can do that. And so if you ask Rich, he will tell you that I thought we were, you know, just embarking on this journey of doing a presentation together. He thought I was trying to pick him up.
Oh, really?
That's hilarious. Then he met my husband, who's got like 2 feet on him. So yeah, it didn't work.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I know. I love when you guys. Yeah, that is such a good story. Thankfully, the people didn't show up for the panel or couldn't do it, because I just feel like that's fate for you guys to be there together.
It is.
You are so charismatic together on the stage. I've seen you guys speak several times. It's always so entertaining, but it's also so educational. I've always gotten so much from your presentations, and we're going to get a little glimpse of that today in Rooted, which I'm really excited about.
I should tell you that Rich isn't with us right now because he's in the middle of a million doctor's appointments. He a couple of years ago had open heart surgery, so they're checking him, you know, to make sure that he's okay and good to go for the next 20 years. So that's where he is today. Okay.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that. It's been fun this summer because we've crossed paths a couple of shows and got to hang out with Rich and you and have dinners and just get to know each other better, which has been really fun for me and just so nice to connect there. So we definitely miss Rich today.
Do you know where we met, Crystal?
I don't.
We met at an ideation show 100 years ago when you were working for Snap Retail. They had just started it. And you were in a booth.
I barely remember that show. You say ideation and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a blast from the past. That must have been like 2010, I think, maybe 2011. How crazy.
Really? That doesn't seem that long ago. I mean, it is, but.
Yeah. It would have been. It would have been. I mean, time flies. That's why it doesn't feel that. Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. Well, I'm so glad that we did meet, that we've been on a lot of stages together. I've learned so much from you, and I am so curious. So you and Rich call yourself consumer anthropologists, where you not only study, but become the consumer. So through that, what are the top 3 shifts or evolutions you've noticed in consumer behavior over the past few years? And how can independent retailers adapt their in-store strategies to cater to these evolved customers?
So we got that title, Consumer Anthropologist, from the Las Vegas Review Journal, and we liked it, so we kept it. In the very beginning, we would dress up as different kinds of customers and go in as nice people, not so nice people, looking good, smelling bad. And we would have a makeup artist make us up to look like we were in our 80s. And we would go shopping, and we could get away with that then, but we can't now. So what have I seen consumer changes? The only consumer changes that I've really seen have to do with technology, really. That's really the only thing that changes us. And it's been, that I can go in your store and I can look to see who else is selling what you're selling and what price they're selling at, and if it's in stock, and I can look into your inventories, and I think COVID has changed us too. I think by and large, as just people, I don't think that we're any nastier than we were a long time ago. I was reading, going through a book by Peter Glenn, who I absolutely was in love with. He was a big retail speaker in the 1990s, and he passed away in 2000. And he wrote this book called, I can't remember the name of the title right now, but it was about customers. And he was talking about how awful they are. And he was going through all these stories. And I thought, well, that could be today. The only difference is that, Karen can get on her cell phone and put it out to TikTok in 10 seconds. And, but I think people are stressed out. I think we have a lot going on. I think if you break it down, the people that come into your store, they're either coming in to browse, or they're coming in because they need something immediately and they need your help, or they need something immediately and they want you to leave them alone until they want you to address them. But, I think that we, by and large, time-starved, stressed out, we've been saying that forever. And it doesn't matter what you do. You can be a stay-at-home mom and be time-starved and stressed out. My daughter, has elected to, after she had children, to stay home and care for them. And she does more things than I can conceive of ever doing without children, let alone with them. So I think we're probably, in a lot of cases, not as kind as we could be. I think we're shorter than we could be. And I think what that does in a retail situation is that the people who work in stores and run stores have to really know how to read people. When they come in, take a look at their face, take a look at their body language, how quickly are they walking? And one of the things that we tell people, and I've told them forever, is make eye contact and smile. And no one does that anymore. You were just in New York City. How many stores did that you walked into? I'm going to say not a lot, right? Because I was there the same week you were there. But we just have to be really cognizant of the fact that people come in with a million things on their shoulders, and if they're not happy, it's not that they're not unhappy with you. You just happen to be the person that we're dumping on. But it's and then today that we didn't have 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, you have to be so concerned about what you say. Because the things that were in the vernacular even 5 years ago now will get you in a lot of serious trouble. So that's one of the things that retailers need to talk to their staffs about, what you say and how you say it and how you approach people. And it's one of the hardest jobs in the world, and it's underrated, is working in retail. It's a really tough job.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I worked in retail in college, and I also kind of feel that way with restaurants, but not as much. I think retail is harder, but I always felt like there should be a college course that every kid, or a high school course that every kid either works at a retail store or restaurant, because I learned so much on how you should treat people because of how I was treated as, a clerk or as a server. I mean, it's tough.
It's really funny. When I was younger, I used to complain about the fact that I was invisible to people who worked in stores because they always wanted to get to people who were my age. But now that I'm my age, I realize that I am invisible because they want to get to the younger people, maybe it's a comfort level. I don't know what it is, but you can't ignore different generations. My generation has a whole lot of money. So you know what? You ignore baby boomers at your own risk.
Yeah, it's so true. George, where do you spend time? Like, how are you finding brands and retailers?
Oh, I am all over the internet all the time. And I'm very lucky because I have good friends that live in other countries. So this past week, I was in New York City and I met up with two of my friends who live in the UK. Jack Stratton works for Insider Trends, and he was hosting retail safaris, which is his brand of retail store tours. And he brought with him Ian Scott, who's become a really good friend of mine. And we do a podcast, Retail Adventures, with Ian from the UK and also with Jeremy C. from Singapore. So we talk all the time about, what we see. And there's this group of people that I follow on LinkedIn, and they follow me, and we're always posting pictures of stores that we visited and what's new and what's exciting. And so I look at that. I write every day, answer a question every day for Retail Wire. And last week I learned about Toys R Us is going to be opening up 24 new stores in the U.S. and they're calling them flagship stores, which means they're going to be really good.
Wow.
That Bass Pro Shops is opening up a store in Tucson that I'm going to go see as soon as it opens. It's the size of 5 Walmarts.
What?
Yeah. So I read Retail Wire, I read Retail Dive, I read. There's a grocery store morning news that I read every day, and that's where I get it. But I'll also, the people that I connect with. Rich and I are one of the 2 of the top retail influencers in the country through Rethink Retail. And, I go through and I read to see what those people have to say because, I might be in New York or Chicago or the town that I live in, but somebody else is in some other town or big town or little town, and we all talk about retail, and it makes it a small world.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So many great resources in there. And I love, you said that your friend from the UK does retail safaris.
Yeah, they're called Retail Safaris.
Oh, that's really cool.
Rich and I do those too. Our next one is going to be at the Creativation Show in March in New Orleans, which is my favorite place in the entire world. So we will take a busload of retailers. I don't know how many times, how many buses we'll take, but we'll take a busload of retailers and take them to the top 5 stores that we choose in that city. We did one in this past April in Columbus, Ohio, which is, the hottest retail in the country. It's where everybody goes to test their stores. So we had a busload. We had about 30 retailers, and we went to 5 different locations. And before we get off the bus, we talk about where we're going and what the location is and what to look for. And we go in and visit. We come back and do a recap. And they're really fun. And they stretch Rich and I because we pick a town or wherever the convention is in town, and then we have to find the best retailers in the area. So, and we look for independent. We look at chain retailers for sure, but we really look for independents because that's where our heart is. Independent retailers.
That is so cool. I hope to go on one of those safaris with you guys. I need to check. Yeah.
Jack's are retail safaris. Ours are retail adventures.
Okay. Retail adventures. Yes. Which is also.
It was the name of our company, Retail Adventures in the Real World.
Yeah. I love that so much. And that's also the name of your blog and your podcast as well, which people need to be tuning into. And we'll link to all that as well.
Okay.
Going back to you as a consumer, I'm just purely curious because I have a social media company. What is your top, from a consumer perspective, your favorite social media platform?
X.
Okay.
Okay. So Twitter. Now, but I have to say I use it differently. So that is where I just talk to people. So I love it because I can talk to people all over the world about things that, I care about retail. I can talk about the Real Housewives of, New York, whatever I want to talk about. I can do it on there, and I like that. if I were to say what is my favorite social media for talking to people, our clients and people who follow us from our presentations, I would say Facebook. We have a very strong following on Facebook, and we talk to people every day. And we use it differently. We have a Kizer ampersand vendor page where we post stupid pictures that we find in stores or people send us to them. And people will say to us, that's so stupid. Why do you do that? Why do you waste a platform? Because people love it. We get more interaction with that than we do with anything else because people come to see, what is the dumb thing you saw in a store today?
Yes, exactly.
And then we use Facebook. We have Kizer Bender, and that's where it's a profile. We talk to people that way, and we talk about what's going on in our lives and things that we've seen and trips. So I like that. I use Instagram to post photos of, places that we've been that we like, but we really only get interaction with our stories. And I connect with business people on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn and Instagram annoy me because the thing that Facebook does is I can put a photo up and I can do a caption. And I can tell you what that picture was and why I took it and what. You cannot do that on LinkedIn and you can't do it on Instagram unless you post 50 pictures individually. And so I find those limiting.
It's interesting that you're getting more interaction from a story perspective. I'm actually not too surprised by that, but that really, anybody listening, make sure you're doing stories. Like it's a really great area for you to get that engagement. And now, we've gone
2.5 times. It's 2.5 to 3 times what we do when we post it.
2, and that's crazy. Awesome.
At least, yeah.
It's so interesting. Okay, I've gone off script a little bit just because I was purely curious about this, but coming back, I want to hear about a client that you've worked with. From your experience in store or virtually with your store makeovers, can you share a transformative story where a simple change in layout or display significantly impacted sales?
Yeah, I can give you a bunch of them.
I bet.
So one of my favorites is Peaceful Parlor in Geneva, Illinois. Sherry Raylish owns that store. And a number of years ago, we were contacted by MSNBC, and they wanted to come out and film us doing a makeover in the store. And we gave them a handful of stores, and they chose Peaceful Parlor. So we went in, and we only changed maybe the first 15, not even 15, like 12 feet inside the store. We changed their speed bumps, and we changed what was on the right side of the store. And those are 2 critical areas when you're working in the store. Her sales went up double digits. We did the same thing with a sewing machine store in Wausau, Wisconsin. Same thing. We changed the front of the store. We changed a lot in the store, but we primarily changed the front of the store. Her sales went up double digits. I mean, you cannot mess with store layout. Now, a couple months ago, we were in California, and we were in a giant, gorgeous, incredible sewing machine store. Sewing machine and fabrics. And we walked into the store, and the owners had taken over a space that had been a furniture store, and it was gorgeous. And they'd done a tremendous job with it. But when we walked in, now 10,000 square foot store, that's huge. About 15 feet in, there was a wall. And in front of that wall was the checkout counter, and on the other side of the wall was the cutting counter. One of the things that you don't want people to do when they walk into a store is see your checkout counter. That should be on a natural end of the shopping experience. We either like it in the center of the store farther back, or we like it on the left-hand side of the store, so as you're leaving, you see the checkout counter. So they said to us, do whatever you want. We will do whatever you want. And I thought, really? I mean, there's a lot going on here. But they were so incredible about wanting to make changes, and they knew that they didn't know what to do. So we moved this checkout counter, the 4 of us, moved this checkout counter that must have been 30 feet long, chopped it in half, moved it to the right front corner of the store that, I just said don't put the checkout counter in the right front, but in a store that big, you're at least 15 feet inside and you're past that corner before you start looking to see what's on the right side. We moved that over there. We moved their cutting table. We took that prime real estate in the very front of the store that had been checkout counter before, and we moved all their sewing machines up front, and we created a lot of vignettes. And in the back of the store, there were gondolas that were lined up like soldiers. We angled them so that, it would take you into the department, take you back to a wall. And we were only there a day and a half, and we touched everything in that store, and they have been doing it since, and it's remarkable what they've done to their store. And we didn't spend anything to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nothing. You spent nothing.
Great point. So what we do, we do retail makeovers. And a retail makeover is not coming in and telling you to, tear down your decor and tear down the walls and build fixtures and buy new fixtures. We might suggest that you do some of those things. But a retail makeover means we're moving your stuff around. I did in December of 2019, I did a women's clothing store. My first store after department store, women's clothing. Went in and relayed this women's clothing store, and it was remarkable what happened after that. I mean, people, a lot of retailers, I think, go into it. Independent retailers go into this because they love whatever they're selling, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they understand the background of retail. And they sort of learn it either by osmosis or they pick it up, they read about it, whatever. And this lady was doing a really good job. But beautiful store. But she was using her four-way fixtures wrong, and she was separating vendors' merchandise and merchandising it by size instead of groupings of what the product is. And it's a little nudge. Could just push you in the right direction. So I can tell you stories all day long.
I bet you could. And I'm sure some of these are also on your show and on your blog. It's fascinating to me how one little tweak can make such a big difference. And like you're saying, even just the front 12 feet of Peaceful Parlor, I mean, there's still so much left of the store. Will you just define, I think most of us probably know, but if there is anybody who's listening, what do you mean by a speed bump?
Okay. So there's areas in your store that Rich and I call lakefront property. So when I walk into a store, I'll walk through the door. When I first walk through, about depending on the size of the store, the first 5 to 15 feet. In most retail stores that are 1,000, 2,000 square feet, it's like 5 square feet, is an area called the decompression zone. And the decompression zone is no man's land. It's anything you put there is not going to sell because nobody sees it when they're entering the store. They might see it on the way out, but then they've already decided they're leaving or they made their purchase or they're not coming back. So when a customer walks into the store, they don't stroll into the store. They walk into the store at whatever pace they're walking outside. And so they walk past this decompression zone, they don't see everything. But just beyond the decompression, and when you move things out of the decompression zone, even another 3 feet, customers see them and they buy them. But you might have signing or something there you want them to see and they miss it. So then you walk a little bit further into the store, and directly in front of you should be a fixture. Usually it's a small table or a stacking table or small fixture that is called a speed bump, and its job is to slow customers down, just like a speed bump works in a parking lot. Slow me down. And it needs to be new, hot, happening merchandise, cross-merchandised, so that I'm not just buying this, I'm buying this and this and this because they're all merchandised together and they all make sense. And there are a lot of techniques to help you sell product from that table. But what that speed bump does is it sets the tone for the rest of the store. I can see if the speed bump is crap, then I probably am not going to see well merchandised fixtures throughout the rest of the store. Mm-hmm. If it's done really well, then I know I'm going to see good end caps and I'm going to see nice adjacencies. And, it's one of those details that you cannot afford to mess up.
Yeah, no kidding. So action item for anybody listening to this that has a physical storefront. Do you have a speed bump? And what's going on in this decompression zone at the front of your store? This is gold, George. I'm loving this. This is so good.
Well, there are 1 million articles, illustrated articles on our blog, retailadventuresblog.com. You can go see pictures.
I feel like, yeah, and with pictures, I feel like we're going to have people just binging that content. It's so good. Now, what are some common mistakes? I bet you see a lot of mistakes, and we did just talk about some of them, but will you share a couple other common mistakes you see retailers with that they make with their store layouts?
Yep. So if you have a center door and you can move it, don't have your checkout counter on the right side. Again, because you don't want people thinking about that before you come in. Not signing your store. Something like 70% of purchase decisions are made inside the store. So I'm coming in and I have no idea that I'm going to buy this woo-woo you have over here. But I see it in your store. And if there's a sign that tells me something about it, we always talk that there are different kinds of signs. And we like storytellers and product sellers. We made that up. So storytellers, Rich says that when you do a storyteller sign, use the word imagine. Imagine how wonderful this Afghan is going to look on your couch. Imagine how great these candles are going to smell. So what he always says is, if I say to you right now, I want you to imagine a peppermint striped elephant with lime green tusks. You're doing it, aren't you? Because the word imagine causes us to do that. So we're going into the holidays, get storyteller signs. Storyteller signs are, I like to say they're female because they interact with women really well. So, and the other thing is that you want to make sure that your sign holders are sign holders. If you can handwrite a sign if that's part of your shtick, and if the same person writes them over and over again. But other than that, put them on your computer, upper and lowercase letters, because it's really hard for older eyes, which is over the age of 55, to read all capital letters. And put them in a sign holder. If I come into your store and I see if I know you and I see signs that are on neon paper scotch taped to your fixtures, I'm tearing them down. Okay, so storytellers are for women. Product sellers are for men. Men like to know the features of a product. Those are the physical characteristics of a product or a service. So I talked about sewing machines. He likes to know what are the things that are important about this sewing machine to make me buy it compared to that sewing machine. You need a lot of those too if you sell, product that lends itself to those kind of signing. But signing is important. The other thing is this, and this is huge. People need to know how to shop your sales floor. And we know that intrinsically when we come in because there are paths that retailers, the aisles that you place, that's how we shop your store. And unfortunately, there's a lot of retailers that don't think about that. Chain stores think about that all day long. But indies, sometimes they do not. So we encourage everybody to get a big piece of foam core and get a blueprint of your store or draw a schematic to scale, and either cut out fixtures or you can draw them with pencil and erase them. And look to make sure that everybody's seeing everything on your store. There's another statistic. 50% of your store is never seen by shoppers. But think about that. You go into a clothing store because you want to buy shoes, you're probably not going to go through the clothing. Or if you're in there to buy a household item, you're not going to walk through the crafts or the shoes or the whatever. People go in on a mission generally to buy something, unless they're browsing, to buy something, and they go right to that section, but you don't let them do that. That's why grocery stores do so well. You walk into the fruits and vegetables, they're wonderful, and then they sell most of not all, but most of their money on the end caps that you have to walk by, and then the big merchandise outposts that we'll start seeing in the center of sales of grocery stores soon, of all the things that you need for Thanksgiving.
Yep.
So, you got to think about how you're going to set your floor and why you're doing it the way you're doing that and what's the outcome that you want. It's not, doesn't that look pretty?
Okay.
That's important.
Right.
But I want it to look pretty but there's a reason that I've done that.
Yeah, you're strategic. I love the idea of actually having the blueprint and having that bird's eye view of really how the flow is in the path to purchase. That's so smart. Also, the word imagine. This works so well from a marketing perspective too, when you're using it in an email or on social media, because exactly like you said, you use it and the brain creates a picture or a movie. And when we see it, we remember it. It's easier for us to see it in our house, to see me wearing it, to see what that's going to look like, which sells the product. So I love that you said that from a signage perspective. And I feel like I don't see that very often. I think that's a great opportunity.
Stores are tremendously undersigned. When I started out working in department stores, and I managed ladies' coats and suits, and then I became an assistant buyer, and I bought plus size clothing, although we didn't call it that at the time. And then I left to go work for the Gap. And when I finally got my own store, I re-merchandised the sales floor, and my sales went crazy. And they came out from California. The man who owned the company Don Fisher came out and walked the floor, and he said, "What did you do? What are you doing here?" I said, "I don't know. I just put that over there, and I did that. And I didn't know that merchandising was a thing, really. I mean, I did a little bit because I worked in stores, but I didn't know that there was magic in how you move things and why you do it. It's something I just have in me. But it's so easy to walk into somebody's store and I can three things immediately that I would change that'll make a difference.
Yeah. I mean, you have it. I feel like I talk about unique abilities a lot over on Crystal and Corks, my other podcast, but I feel like that's one of your unique abilities is like, it's just how your brain works. It's how your vision works. Like you can just see it. And there's two things that I've heard you say in past presentations that stick with me a lot. Even just when I was in New York City this past couple of days ago. One thing you said, correct me if I'm wrong in telling the story, but you had a store and it was at a train station and you would have certain merchandise in the morning and then people would come in and they go to work and then they would come back and you changed it at night. And I'm like, this is brilliant because they're seeing new things. Can you talk about that story, George?
Yes. So it was actually on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, downtown Chicago. Magnificent mile. It was on the corner of Michigan and Randolph, and it's been torn down, and it's now replaced by the Container building that's got the big diamond on the top of it. So that was my store on that block, and Marshall Fields was right around the corner. So every day I would come in, and I would have my store set for the morning because I had changed it the night before, and I would just change, and the store was 2,500 square feet. I had space in the front for 3 racks that were speed bumps. And I would change them in the morning after the morning rush because my customers would come in. They'd walk past on their way to work. They'd see something. They'd come in. Then after the morning rush, I would change those 3 racks again. The same people would come in at lunch. Then I would change those racks again because they would stop in on their way to the train station. And then at the end of the night, I'd change them again so they'd be fresh for the morning. But seriously, my customers thought that I had more merchandise than Marshall Fields around the corner. Because I just made those 3 or 4 racks, just changed them 3 times a day, which was so easy to do. I mean, if you have your speed bumps on wheels, wheel them,
Totally. Yeah. Make it easy on yourself.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're in that type of area, when we were in Oculus and there were a few little vendors here and I'm seeing all this traffic and I'm like, I know they're going to be coming back. I'm like thinking, I bet these kiosks are not changing. They're just the same. And it's such a missed opportunity. So if you're in that kind of high trafficked area where your customer is going to see you multiple times a day, massive opportunity. I think that's so brilliant. The other thing that you said that I think about you so much is music in a store. Like for me, I love music. And when they've got the right playlist, I am just like, I'm in it. I don't feel rushed. I feel like, oh, I'm going to browse longer. Maybe I want to try on more stuff. And then I was in a store once that had no music and I'm like, this feels so awkward. And then, so I always think of you, whether I hear music or not, will you talk about the power of music?
Yes. So music makes people stay longer and buy more. My absolutely unscientific is that disco is the sound of money. Because, I mean, from the days that I worked for the Gap and then left and went to downtown Chicago, and it's that beat. And Rich says it goes along with your heartbeat. And so it doesn't have to be disco. It can be, pop music that's not, expletive laden, but, it can be that beat. It just makes you feel up. Now, not to the level of where it's making your ears bleed like Abercrombie used to do, not that loud. Some studies will tell you that classical music makes people stay longer and buy more. I think that depends on the store and what you're selling. If I'm coming in to buy an outfit for a wedding, I don't want to be listening to classic music because my head is, I'm going to be dancing in this. So, for years, Target didn't play music. And every single month I would go in there and I'd walk through the store and I'd go, well, I'm at the morgue again today. People would laugh because we do work a lot in the funeral industry, but they would never play music, and you're in this giant store, and it might be at night, and you don't see other people, and it's so deathly quiet, and it was horrible. So they remodeled our local Target store, and as they're remodeling stores, they play music. And in my store, I happened to be there the day that they turned the music on.
Oh man.
And it was like, the angels singing.
It's seriously.
It's so much more comfortable. Now, independent retailers need to go to ASCAP, ASCAP.com. That's the American Society of Composers. And they need to read what's legal and what is not legal. They have a page for retail. If your store is over a certain footage, you cannot play a radio, you cannot play CDs, you cannot play Pandora or Shopify, because, we complain about people take our designs all the time. If we play music in our store, we're taking somebody else's creativity. We have to pay for it. So there are companies. There's Sirius for business. There's Retail Radio. There's a million of them. There's an article on our blog about that too. Just put music in store in the search box, because you need to make sure that you're playing it legally. They do come out and they do check. And if you are playing it illegally, the fines can be $75, $75,000. So you want to make sure that you're playing it legally. And you don't, and even if you have a tiny store, and the article on ASCAP.com tells you what you can do, you don't want to be playing the radio and have somebody else's store advertisement come on, or an advertisement for something stupid, right?
Oh, that's happened before as a customer in the store. And it's so jarring when like commercials come on and it's usually louder. And it's so funny when we were at the Stimulate show that you were also at in Nashville a couple of months ago. I talk about this too with heavy music, and I found cloudcovermusic.com, which you pay for the rights. And something I like about that is in the $29 a month version, you can have your own commercial. Yeah. So I feel like if you're going to have a commercial, it should be your own. Yeah. Have it be your own, not somebody else's. And when I gave that tip at the Stimulate show, there was a man there who owned several mobile phones, like cell phone stores. And he said just a couple months ago, a T-Mobile commercial came on in my store where I sell the competitor plan, so it's like, don't have other people's commercials. A competitor commercial can come on. If you're going to have them, they need to be yours. So it's cloudcovermusic.com. And we'll link to all these resources in this episode.
So here I am. I'm sending myself an email.
Perfect. Yes.
I love that.
Oh, same. Yeah. And I just think it's a great opportunity, obviously, to tell people to join the list or know about the event, or, did you know this promo is happening? So, okay. So George, You've mentioned the ambiance, decor, signing, and display work as silent salespeople. For independent retailers who might not have the budget for extensive renovations or high-end displays, what are some cost-effective strategies or tips that they can implement to enhance their stores' appeal and boost sales? I feel like we talked about a couple already, but do you have more to add to that?
I have a million. The biggest thing is understand that your sales floor is a living, breathing entity, and it has a personality, and it needs to be changed all the time. If you're not changing the front of your store at least once a week, you're missing the boat. Those speed bumps, they have to be changed once a week, whether they need it or not. And you will start changing them, and someone will come up to you and say, "When did we get that?" And you'll go, 6 months ago. Where you been? We don't look the way we should look at sales floors. So fixtures need to be changed. Once a quarter, you need to change the lakefront property at the front of your store. And again, you can tweak it, but change it, update the signs. The lakefront property, we have an exercise called the V and the Vista, and you walk about 5-10 feet inside the front of your store to the end of your decompression zone. Stop, open your arms out wide. What you see directly ahead of you is the Vista. That's where the speed bumps are. That's the most important selling area of the store. Then you're going to follow your shoulder from the tip of your right shoulder down to the tip of your right finger. And whatever area you're looking at, that area on the floor, lakefront property, it's going to sell better than other parts of the store. And whatever wall you're pointing at, that's a power wall. That's an important wall. Same thing on this side. Your checkout counters. You might be a craft store, but that doesn't mean that, or a tanning salon, or that doesn't mean that on the checkout counter of your store you can't be selling necklaces and candles and fun notebooks. And women are huge impulse shoppers, and we egg each other on to buy. You need that. But, a huge impulse shoppers, if you don't put it in front of us, we're not going to see it. And, somebody will say to me, well, I own a quilt store. I sell fabric. Why would I put necklaces up there? Because, we have been together at the ASD show for the Independent Retailer Conference. And if you walk through, and every market has these, you walk through the cash and carry area, and you'll see necklaces that you see in stores, $30, $40. And they're selling them there for $5. So you buy a bunch of those and you put it around the holidays, Mother's Day, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever. You put them on your checkout counter. You don't have to. If you buy it for $5, you can sell for $20 and still make a lot of money, right? Do that. Give customers the opportunity to buy, and give yourself the opportunity to sell. You don't have to stay so tight in your box that you miss an opportunity to make some extra cash. So there's a million things that I could talk about, Crystal.
Yeah. Well, and you've given so many on this episode already, which I feel like this episode is just so actionable. People that are listening, and this is the key, retailers, is you have to take action. This is so important. Like, you heard tips today that could increase sales in the double digits, like some other retailers that George has worked with. It's so good. Now, George, I have a question on here. What's one thing that can make a big difference?
The front of your store. People make value judgments about your store in the first 10 seconds that they walk in. They're looking at, in that 10 seconds, they're deciding whether or not they want to stay or they want to leave. And we're unconscious when we do it. The other thing is how your salespeople look. And I know dress codes are not, big topics anymore, but they should be. I was in a Nordstrom store last week. I am not going to buy a pair of shoes, and I'm sorry if this sounds elitist or whatever, but I needed shoes for a wedding, and I was looking at they were, $200-$300. I'm not going to buy them from somebody who's standing there in a pair of sneakers and jeans with holes in them. I get that that's the style. I wear them myself. But you have to, I tell my children, you have to dress for the occasion. there is an appropriateness of attire. I'm not gonna, and I walk through some of the other departments, and I get that that's the style right now. But if I need you to help me find the perfect outfit or the perfect whatever, I need to be looking at somebody who's reflecting that limit of what I'm looking for. I did a LinkedIn post this past week about being in Bergdorf Goodman's. So I used to shop at Bergdorf's when I was a little kid with my mother, and I had a different kind of experience this time because it was the day that New York City had the worst rain since 1947, and my sister and I looked like drowned rats, and we're not exactly their size, and so it was not a remarkable situation. But every person that I looked at, every person that I saw who was working that store was appropriately dressed. There was nobody in those departments that looked like they got out of bed and put something on and came into work. And so I think that's another thing, because if I'm making a value judgment about your store in 10 seconds or less, I'm looking at your people and making a value judgment in 5 seconds or less. They don't have to wear tuxedos, but I come into your store. I've come to visit you. It's an occasion. Rise to it.
Oh, it's such a good tip. And I think that it kind of makes me think, similar to marketing, really knowing your customers. And sure, maybe that the customer loves the jeans with the holes in them, and they're like, "Oh, I love your jeans. Where'd you get those?" But if your customer is also somebody who wouldn't, then let's dress the part, because somebody's not going to be offended if you don't have holes in your jeans. It really comes down to, how are we being represented? The brand of the store, which that's not just your logo and colors. It's like the feel. It's everything. And really knowing your customers and what they're, how they are looking at you and the experience that they're looking for.
Well, in the jeans department and the juniors department go crazy.
Yeah, right.
But, if I'm in the, ladies dress department or sportswear or whatever, wear those clothes. So that used to be a thing with me. It drove me crazy. In the stores that I ran, you had to wear the clothes that were on the floor. And we gave the companies, gave employees a generous discount that could happen. And if they couldn't, if you go into a Macy's store right now, you have to wear black to work at Macy's. So you might have on black pants and a black sweater, but you look acceptable to be there. We one time years and years ago, Rich and I were in our office, and we've always had a pretty cool office. Looking more like a big living room than desks. And so we're in our office one day, and he has his desk at one end of the room, mine's at the other end of the room. So we're standing back by his desk, and this woman came in and she said, "Can you tell me where I can find the people who work here?" And, well, that would be us. She goes, "Oh, I thought you were the cleaning crew." We had on jeans and T-shirts, nice. And we looked at each other after she left, and we said, "We can't do this anymore. We don't have to wear suits to work, but we need to rise to the level of what people would expect to see us wearing if they came to visit us." So
yeah, it's great advice. Great advice.
Feel on dress codes.
Yeah. That's so good, George. Now, before we go into the resilience round, I just want to give a plug, because you're going to be speaking at Evolve, our in-person conference in Denver, Colorado, April 28th and 29th. And you're going to be talking about store display, merchandising. You have so many amazing tips. And I just want to give a plug, because when this goes out, it'll be end of November. Super early bird tickets are still available. Those expire end of 2023. So you have a month to lock in, get your ticket. You're going to want to go to George's presentation. Trust me, you're going to want to. Plus, George and Rich spoke at we had a virtual event a couple years ago. Man, our retailers went crazy over your presentation. There's so much gold and value and humor too. It's just such a fun presentation. So thank you for being a part of our event. And I can't wait to watch your presentation. Yeah.
And when you go to Evolve, and you should, bring bring photos of your store so we can sit down and talk about it, and we can look directly at your store and give you some tips about, what are the 3 things I'd do to your store if I came.
Oh, wow. That is awesome. George, what a cool call to action to everyone that's going. I can't wait to hear some of these stories and see some of these photos too. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. All right.
Welcome.
Are you ready for the resilience round?
I don't know what that is, but yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Best business book.
I don't read business books.
Yep.
I don't read business books on purpose because if I read them, I might take something into my head that's not mine. So I'm really, as a speaker, I'm really cognizant of that. So I read articles, I read comments and things online, but I do not read business books.
Yeah. When you told me that, I just felt like that is so interesting and makes a lot of sense. And I love that you do that. Like you kind of have your blinders on in your lane. Like these are my original thoughts. Yeah.
It's the same reason I did stand up in college. It's the same reason you don't go see other comedians.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. Best retail technology, like an app or software.
I don't do a lot of technology.
Yeah, that's fine.
I guess social media.
Yes. Well, that's a good one. That's a great one, actually.
It's a great way to communicate with your customers. I'm just blown away that there are still retailers who don't use it. Okay, go ahead.
Exactly. I feel like you did cover this one. How do you keep up with the ever-changing retail landscape? You gave some really great resources earlier. Is there anything else that you would add to that? I
sign up for, here's what I did. And we recommend that retailers do this too. I have an email address that has nothing to do with me. It's got doesn't have Bender, Georganne, anything in there. And I sign up for every interesting newsletter I can find. It goes into a separate email box. I review it every day or a couple times a week to see what's going on. But we recommend that retailers do the same thing. Nothing to do with your name or your store, and sign up for every retailer's email blasts that you like or you like the store. It's a great place to get ideas.
That's a great idea. Awesome. Yeah. Because retail changes so often, how do you recharge your batteries?
I go to Universal Studios in Orlando.
Yeah.
Or I go to New Orleans and I walk the French Quarter. Rich and I became annual pass holders.
Did you really?
At Universal 23 years ago.
Oh.
And if it gets really crazy or we're stuck, if we'll go to a movie or something, or we'll jump on a plane and go to Universal for a day and come back.
I love that.
Yeah.
And plus there's a bunch of conferences in Orlando. That's
yeah. That's why we did it.
That's so fun. We're going to Universal in a couple of weeks and I'm very excited because I am the same. I love that is so a recharge my battery place.
It's my favorite place. And I'm usually seeing the oldest living Gryffindor walking around in my house robe.
Yes, that is like a guarantee.
And closer to home, I'll play with my grandkids.
Oh, yeah, good one. To help retailers be stronger, more rooted in success, what's a store layout foundational best practice?
Do not ignore your lakefront property.
Mm-hmm.
Do not ignore impulse areas like checkout counter or promotional list. But here's one. This is better. Every day, we call it the 360-degree pass-by. Every day, you and every single person who works in your store, you have to walk the entire sales floor. Every single aisle, every nook and cranny. And the first couple times you do it, you're going to say, this is stupid. What were they thinking telling me to do this? But after you do it about 3 times, you're going to see, that's a problem. I need to change that. Why isn't there stock there? What's going on here? And if you do it and everyone who works for you does it, it's amazing how well you will learn your sales floor. But every day takes about a minute and a half.
Yep. Get in the habit of that. That's such a great tip. Mm-hmm. Finally, what do you think the future of independent retail looks like?
Strong. Everybody wants to be an independent retailer. Macy's just announced that they're going to smaller formats. Target has smaller formats. Walmart has smaller formats. We say that small is the new black. Everybody wants, independent retailers. If I have an issue with something, I can make a decision and turn on a dime. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't do it. There's not 87,000 chains things that I have to go up in red tape. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. If I want to add it, I add it. And independent retailers are so envied by chains and big boxes. We don't realize it. But boy, Small Business Saturday is coming up. That's the great time to do an open house. You don't even have to put things on sale. Do a great open house and let people know all the wonderful things you do in your store, because you, as an independent retailer, you have a leg up on everybody. Sometimes we just don't realize that we do.
I couldn't agree more. George, where can people find out more information about you and connect with you?
Our website is keyzerandbender.com. That's Kiz as in zebra, ERAND, BENDER.com. Our blog is retailadventuresblog.com. You can find us on every social media at Kizer and Bender. We're both on LinkedIn. We have a 24/7 mobile hotline. But if you call us at 3 a.m, it comes to my phone. I will pick up the phone and call you back in 2 days. At 3 a.m.
Yeah, don't call at 3 a.m. Don't do that.
Sometimes people do just to be funny.
Really?
Rich encourages that, but I will get you back at 3 a.m.
Okay. Yes. No kidding. What happens with this mobile hotline? Tell me about what you guys do with that.
It's my cell phone.
And okay, so it's just basically, if they want to get in touch or have a question or need something, that's the way. Awesome.
I mean, it started when, everybody first started having mobile phones, because we've been at this for almost 34 years. People started having mobile phones, and, if you couldn't get us at our office, you could call the mobile hotline. Now I have our office phone when we leave. I have our office phone transferred to my cell phone, so you'll get us anyway. But people don't call anymore. But sometimes if you need help right away, call.
Yeah, I love that. Mobile hotline sounds way cooler than cell phone. I wish we would bring that back. Yeah.
24/7 mobile hotline.
Yeah, that's awesome. George, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your stories and your strategies. This was so fun, and I know our listeners loved it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Everyone, remember that I'm rooting for your success. Have a great week ahead. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me. Don't forget to join the Rise and Shine newsletter, which is social media news you need to know, sent via email every Monday morning. Go to crystalmediaco.com/rise to join. And don't miss the newest episode of Rooted in Retail, which drops every Sunday morning.